Chosen ones, let's start with something clear and grounded. This message is not based on feelings, assumptions, or imagination. It's based on proof, on patterns, on outcomes that can no longer be hidden. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly, but when it turns in your favor, the shift is undeniable. What's happening right now is the result of truth finally standing on its own feet. The evidence has been building quietly, behind closed doors, through actions, through timing, through exposure that didn't need your involvement. You stayed silent. You stayed steady. And that silence allowed reality to speak for you. People who doubted you, misjudged you, or confidently believed their version of events would hold forever are about to experience shock. Not because you did something dramatic, but because facts don't bend to narratives. Proof never lies. And once proof shows up, opinions lose power. Justice doesn't rush, but it is precise. It lands exactly where it needs to, without emotion, without apology. This is why things are shifting now. Conversations are changing. Energies are shifting. Certain people are rethinking everything they assumed about you, not because you demanded validation, but because reality corrected the record. And the most powerful part? You didn't have to explain, chase, or defend yourself. The truth did the work. Stay with this message till the end, because what's unfolding next explains why this moment arrived now, and how to move forward without disrupting the favor that's already working for you. Why proof matters more than words. Chosen one, let this settle in your heart slowly. Words are fragile, but proof is solid. Words depend on who is speaking and who is listening. They can be misunderstood, twisted, exaggerated, or completely rewritten. People can take one sentence and turn it into a story that suits them. That's why words alone never bring lasting clarity. Proof does. Proof doesn't argue. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't need to raise its voice to be noticed. It simply shows up and stands there, unmovable. Think about how often people talk confidently, yet have nothing to back it up. Stories spread fast, especially when emotions are involved. Opinions feel powerful when many people repeat them. But none of that makes them true. Truth is quiet. It waits. And when the time is right, it reveals itself through results, patterns, and outcomes that cannot be denied. That's what's happening now in your life. Not through dramatic exposure, not through public confrontation, but through reality doing its job. Proof shows up in ways people don't expect. It appears through timing, lining up perfectly, through situations resolving themselves without your involvement, through people realizing things on their own, through silence, speaking louder than explanations ever could. While others were busy talking, reality was collecting evidence. And now that evidence is visible, even if no one announces it out loud, this is why you didn't need to defend yourself. Defense keeps you stuck in argument mode. Proof moves you forward. Every time you chose not to explain, not to react, not to correct every misunderstanding, you were unknowingly allowing space for truth to mature. You trusted that what is real doesn't expire. Lies need maintenance. Truth doesn't. Another powerful thing about proof is that it ends confusion naturally. When proof arrives, people stop asking questions. They stop debating. They stop pushing narratives, not because they suddenly agree with you, but because reality leaves them no room to argue. That's when conversations change. That's when energy shifts. That's when silence appears where noise once existed. And here's the most important part. Proof protects your peace. Words drain energy. Proof restores it. You no longer need to carry the weight of being misunderstood. You no longer need to replay old moments in your head. What happened is being corrected without you revisiting it. That lightness you feel isn't imagination. It's confirmation that something has settled. This isn't about being proven right for ego. It's about being freed from the burden of explanation. Truth outlasting lies doesn't just clear your name, it clears your path. From this point forward, let actions, outcomes, and consistency speak. You don't need to convince anyone anymore. Reality already has. And once proof has spoken, there is nothing left to say. Why justice moved quietly, not dramatically. Chosen one. Justice often arrives in ways that don't match what people expect. Many think justice must be loud. Arguments, public exposure, dramatic moments where everything explodes at once. But real justice doesn't need noise to be effective. It moves quietly because it is confident. It doesn't seek attention, validation, or applause. It simply corrects what was out of balance and moves on. What happened in your situation was not designed to create a scene. It was designed to create alignment. While others waited for confrontation, the process was already unfolding behind the scenes. Conversations were happening without your name being spoken. Realizations were forming without announcements. People were watching patterns, not reactions, and those patterns told the truth far better than any explanation ever could. You may not have been present when certain decisions were made, and that's important. Justice removed you from the room on purpose. If you had been involved, emotions could have interfered. Opinions could have distracted the outcome. By keeping you out of it, the result remained clean. What was decided came from observation, not influence, from facts, not feelings. This is also why you weren't called to defend yourself. Fighting would have implied uncertainty. Silence showed confidence. You didn't chase answers because the system didn't need your input anymore. The truth had already gathered enough weight to stand on its own. And when truth is heavy enough, it doesn't require effort. It requires time. Quiet justice also protects your energy. Loud battles drain you. Silent resolution preserves you. While others expected you to react, you were being spared from unnecessary exhaustion. You weren't being ignored. You were being preserved. Sometimes the greatest sign of justice is not being pulled into chaos at all. Another reason justice stayed quiet is because exposure isn't always necessary. Not every truth needs a spotlight. Some truths only need to be acknowledged internally to change behavior externally. When people realize they were wrong, they don't always announce it. They adjust. They retreat. They become careful. That shift is subtle, but it's powerful. This kind of justice also prevents retaliation. When things happen quietly, there's no stage for ego, no crowd for defense, no fuel for further conflict. Everything settles naturally. Balance is restored without creating new wounds. That's why it feels calm, instead of dramatic. And finally, quiet justice lasts longer. Drama fades quickly. Noise distracts, but silent correction creates permanent change. What has shifted now doesn't need revisiting. It's already settled at a deeper level. This was justice done right, efficient, clean, and complete. Silence wasn't weakness. It was the system working intelligently in your favor. Why people are shocked now? Chosen one, the shock you're witnessing right now has very little to do with you becoming someone new. You didn't suddenly transform overnight. You didn't announce a victory or demand recognition. What changed is their understanding. For a long time, they were comfortable believing their own version of events. That version made them feel safe, confident, and in control. They assumed time would work in their favor. Instead, time worked against the illusion. Many people believe that if they wait long enough, the truth will fade. They think memories weaken, details blur, and attention shifts. But truth doesn't disappear. It settles. And when it settles, it becomes clearer, not weaker. That's what caught them off guard. They expected distance to protect them. But distance gave perspective. Patterns became visible. Inconsistencies surfaced. And suddenly, what once felt certain began to look unstable. The shock also comes from misplaced confidence. When people rely on manipulation, they stop paying attention to reality. They believe controlling the narrative is the same as controlling the outcome. But narratives only work when no one is watching closely. Over time, actions speak louder than stories. Behavior reveals intent. And when enough time passes, the gap between what was said and what actually happened becomes impossible to ignore. That's why you're seeing confusion. Not loud confusion, but internal confusion. People are replaying moments in their minds. They're reconsidering things they dismissed too quickly. They're realizing that what they believed so strongly may not have been accurate. This kind of realization is uncomfortable, so it often shows up as silence rather than apology. Changed behavior is another sign of shock. When people realize they misjudge someone, they don't always admit it. Instead, they become cautious. They pull back. They observe more. They speak less. This isn't maturity. It's adjustment. They're recalibrating because their assumptions no longer match reality. The sudden quiet you feel is also part of this. Silence appears when there's nothing left to argue. When proof exists, discussion feels risky. Words lose power in the presence of facts. So instead of confronting the truth openly, many choose to sit with it privately. And the unspoken realization is the deepest part. Some understand they were wrong but won't say it out loud. Not because they don't know, but because admitting it would require accountability. That realization stays inside them, shaping future choices even if no conversation ever happens. This shock isn't loud or dramatic, but it's real. It's the moment when illusion collapses quietly, and you don't need to respond to it. The truth has already done the work. Why you didn't need to explain yourself. Chosen one, there was a reason you felt held back from explaining yourself, even when everything in you wanted to speak. That restraint wasn't suppression, it was protection. Explanations often feel like clarity, but in reality, they open the door to argument. When you explain, you invite others to question, twist, or reinterpret your words. The truth doesn't need that risk. Silence kept the truth safe until it could stand on its own. Every time you paused instead of reacting, something important was happening behind the scenes. While you stayed quiet, people were forced to observe instead of debate. Without your words to focus on, they had to watch actions, outcomes, and patterns. Over time, those patterns told a clearer story than any explanation ever could. What you lived spoke louder than what you could have said. Another reason you didn't need to explain yourself is because explanations drain energy. They pull you back into moments you were meant to move past. Repeating your side would have kept you emotionally tied to a situation that was already resolving itself. By staying silent, you preserved your peace and allowed your growth to continue without interruption. Silence also revealed who was truly listening and who only wanted control. Some people ask questions not to understand, but to poke holes, shift blame, or regain power. By not engaging, you removed their leverage. They couldn't manipulate your words because you didn't offer any. That's when the balance shifted. Clarity builds slowly when it's real. Instead of forcing understanding, you allowed time to do its work. Time exposed inconsistencies in other people's stories. It highlighted your consistency. Without you defending yourself, the contrast became obvious. And once that contrast was clear, explanations became unnecessary. You may have noticed how the demand for answers faded. People who once pressed you for explanations suddenly went quiet, not because they stopped caring, but because the answers arrived without conversation. Reality answered for you. When truth becomes visible, questions lose urgency. There's also dignity in not over-explaining. You didn't need to prove your worth, your intentions, or your integrity. Explaining would have implied doubt. Silence showed confidence, not arrogance, but quiet self-respect. You trusted that what was real would eventually be recognized. And finally, silence allowed closure without confrontation. Not every chapter needs a final discussion. Some chapters close through understanding, not words. The resolution you needed didn't come from being heard. It came from being seen. And now, that seeing has happened. Why this happened at this exact moment? Chosen one. Nothing about this moment is random. Timing is not just about when something happens, but who you are when it happens. If this shift had come earlier, it might have pulled you off your path. You were still learning, still healing, still building inner stability. At that stage, justice could have felt like a distraction, something to react to instead of something to receive. You might have focused more on being right than on becoming whole. If it had come later, it could have cost you energy you didn't need to lose. Waiting too long can turn patience into exhaustion. You might have begun questioning yourself, replaying old situations, or carrying weight that wasn't meant to stay with you forever. That's why this moment arrived before bitterness could settle in. It came while your heart was still open, but your boundaries were strong. This timing also reflects your growth. You're no longer operating from impulse. You're not looking for payback or validation. You've reached a place where you can accept correction without gloating and closure without reopening wounds. That maturity matters. Justice isn't just about balance. It's about what the receiver does next. And now you're ready to move forward cleanly. Another reason this moment arrived now is because your identity is clearer. Earlier, you might have defined yourself through the situation. Now you see it as something that happened, not something that defines you. That shift allows resolution without attachment. You can acknowledge what's been corrected without letting it shape your future decisions. The timing also protected your character. Had justice arrived too soon, ego might have taken control. Had it arrived too late, resentment might have followed. Instead, it came when humility and clarity could coexist. You can recognize truth without announcing it. You can feel relief without seeking applause. That balance shows inner readiness. This moment also aligns with what's next for you. Closure often comes right before expansion. Loose ends get tied when a new chapter is about to begin. You couldn't step fully into what's ahead while carrying unresolved weight from the past. This correction cleared space, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. And finally, this timing honors your patience. You didn't force outcomes. You didn't manipulate situations. You allowed life to unfold naturally. That trust is being acknowledged now. Not loudly, not dramatically, but meaningfully. Why some people are distancing themselves. Chosen one, when people begin to distance themselves, it's natural to wonder if something went wrong. But in this case, distance is not rejection. It's recognition. Something shifted. and they felt it. The clarity that's now around you makes certain dynamics uncomfortable. Not because you did anything wrong, but because truth changes how people relate to you. Some individuals are stepping back because they see now that they misjudged you. That realization can be heavy. It brings embarrassment, regret, or quiet self-reflection. Instead of addressing it openly, many choose distance. Stepping away feels easier than confronting the fact that their assumptions were incorrect. This distance isn't hostility, it's processing. Others are distancing themselves because access has changed. The version of you they interacted with before, more available, more explainable, more accommodating, is no longer present in the same way. You didn't block them, the system did. Boundaries formed naturally as you grew clearer. When access is reduced, those who benefited from your openness feel it immediately. There are also people who distance themselves because they sense accountability. When truth becomes visible, behavior matters more. Some people aren't comfortable being seen clearly because clarity removes excuses. Instead of adjusting, they step away. Distance becomes a way to avoid responsibility without confrontation. Another reason for distance is energetic mismatch. Growth changes frequency. Conversations that once flowed easily may now feel forced or shallow. Silence appears where connection once existed. This doesn't mean anyone is bad. It means alignment has shifted. Not every relationship is meant to grow with you. Distance can also be protective. Sometimes life creates space so you're not pulled backward emotionally. Staying too close to people who belong to an old chapter can blur focus. By creating distance, the system protects your momentum and keeps your path clean. It's important to understand that distance doesn't always come with explanation. Many people won't say why they've stepped back. They may not even fully understand it themselves. All they know is that something feels different, and they respond by moving away. That response says more about their readiness than your worth. Most importantly, distance is not punishment, it's correction. Balance is being restored, quietly. Those who can meet you in truth will stay. Those who can't will fade without conflict. This separation is not something you need to manage or fix. It's happening naturally. Why you must stay calm now. Chosen one, staying calm right now is not about holding yourself back. It's about holding the moment correctly. When things finally turn in your favor, there's often a strong urge to react, to express relief, or to make your position clear. But this phase isn't asking for expression, it's asking for composure. Calm keeps what has shifted from being disturbed. This is not a victory that needs announcing. Loud celebration can attract unnecessary attention and reopen doors that have already closed. Not everyone needs to know how you feel or what you've realized. Some outcomes stay strong because they remain quiet. Peaceful resolution is more powerful than public validation. Staying calm also protects you from misinterpretation. When emotions rise, words can be misunderstood. Even honesty can be twisted when spoken at the wrong time. By staying steady, you remove the chance for your reactions to become the new focus. The situation has already resolved itself. You don't need to become part of the story again. Another reason calm matters is because it allows reality to keep working. Truth doesn't need help once it's visible. Intervening now could slow the natural settling process. Silence gives space for understanding to deepen without interference. What has already been recognized doesn't need reinforcement. Calm also keeps your inner balance intact. Emotional spikes, whether joy, relief, or anger, can pull you out of alignment. You've worked hard to reach this grounded state. protect it. You don't need to relive the past to appreciate the present. Staying calm helps you remain forward-focused. This moment is also a test of maturity. Anyone can react when things feel unfair. True growth shows when you can stay composed after balance is restored. Calmness shows you're no longer seeking acknowledgement. You're comfortable letting outcomes speak for themselves. Silence right now isn't avoidance, it's confidence. You trust the process enough not to interfere. You know what's real, and that certainty doesn't require explanation. When you stop trying to control perception, you allow truth to stay undisturbed. This resolution is not the destination, it's the clearing before movement. You need clear thinking and steady energy for the next step. Noise drains focus. Calm preserves direction. What justice actually restored for you? Chosen one? Justice did far more than fix a situation. It repaired parts of you that were quietly carrying strain for a long time. When something is unfair, it doesn't just affect reputation or outcomes. It affects energy. You are holding tension without even realizing it. The need to stay composed, to move carefully, to protect yourself from misunderstanding created an invisible weight. Now that weight has lifted. One of the first things justice restored is your energy. You're no longer spending mental effort replaying events, preparing explanations, or bracing for judgment. That constant background noise has gone quiet. Your mind feels clearer, your body feels lighter, and your days feel less heavy. This isn't imagination. It's what happens when unnecessary pressure leaves your system. Justice also brought back your confidence, but not the loud kind. This is a steady confidence rooted in self-trust. You no longer question whether you did the right thing. You don't second-guess your choices or wonder if you should have acted differently. That inner stability is powerful because it doesn't depend on approval. You know where you stand now, and that knowing brings calm. Another important thing that was restored is your position. Not a title or label, but your place in the situation. You're no longer standing in defense mode. You're no longer being evaluated through confusion or misunderstanding. The balance has corrected itself, and you're back where you belong, centered, respected, and unburdened. Even if no one says it out loud, the shift is felt. Justice also returned your sense of direction. When things are unresolved, it's hard to move forward fully. A part of you stays stuck in the past, waiting for closure. Now that closure has arrived naturally, your focus has cleared. You can look ahead without carrying old concerns into new spaces. The lightness you feel is one of the clearest signs that something has changed permanently. Temporary relief fades quickly. This doesn't. It stays because it's rooted in resolution, not distraction. You're not avoiding the past. You've been released from it. Another subtle restoration is peace in your reactions. Situations that once triggered emotion now pass without disturbance. Not because you've shut down, but because there's nothing left to defend. When justice settles something properly, it removes the emotional hooks. This restoration also strengthens your boundaries. You're more aware of what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You don't feel guilty for protecting your peace. That awareness is a gift that stays with you. Justice didn't just correct an outcome, it realigned you internally, and alignment lasts. You're not carrying what was never yours anymore. What you feel now is confirmation, not relief. Something closed, something settled, and something opened. And from this place, you move forward lighter, clearer, and stronger than before. How to move forward from this point? Chosen one. Moving forward from this point is about simplicity, not effort. You don't need a dramatic exit or a final explanation. This chapter has already ended on its own. The door didn't close because you pushed it. It closed because proof made it unnecessary to keep it open. Your role now is not to revisit what happened, but to step into what's ahead with clarity. Moving clean means releasing emotional residue. Even when justice arrives, it's easy to carry old reactions out of habit. Let those go. You don't need to rehearse past conversations or imagine different endings. Nothing needs correction anymore. Clean movement is quiet movement, free of resentment, pride, or the need to be understood. Moving focused means directing your energy where it actually matters. Attention is powerful. Where you place it determines what grows. Looking back pulls energy into places that no longer exist. Staying focused keeps your momentum intact. Ask yourself what deserves your attention now, not what deserves your explanation. Moving without looking back doesn't mean forgetting. It means not returning emotionally. You can remember lessons without re-entering the situation. Reflection served its purpose while things were unresolved. Now, clarity replaces reflection. You already understand what happened. Revisiting it won't add insight. It will only slow you down. You may feel a temptation to seek closure conversations, especially if silence feels incomplete. But closure doesn't always come through dialogue. Sometimes closure comes through understanding. Proof already delivered that understanding. Conversations at this stage don't bring peace. They reopen doors that were closed for your protection. What's ahead for you requires a clear mind and steady energy. Carrying old explanations or unresolved emotions will only cloud your direction. This next phase asks for presence, not review. Trust that what needed to be seen has been seen. Another important part of moving forward is trusting your instincts. You've learned how to recognize misalignment early. Use that wisdom without becoming guarded. Move openly, but with awareness. You don't need to doubt yourself anymore. Forward movement also means allowing life to respond differently to you. When a chapter truly closes, opportunities shift. People interact with you differently. Circumstances feel lighter. Let that change happen without questioning it. You don't need permission to move on.